Good evening, everyone.
Green light, give us all you can.
Indianapolis, of course, is one of the most famous racetracks in America, if not the most recognizable on the 50 states of the USA. But of course, Indianapolis, which has been around since 1909, hasn't always just hosted motor racing. Whilst the original track owners were looking for farmland and eventually settled in the state here, one of the first races that ever occurred wasn't to do with cars, wasn't even to do with four wheels. It was actually a helium balloon race. 2 months before the circuit was actually created, it was classed as a race, and the finish line was actually all the way over in Alabama. Spent a day's worth of racing, and that effectively kicked off 100 and nearly 120 years of action from this circuit. Now, of course, Indianapolis is actually older than the town of Indianapolis. When the owners first built this racetrack, it wasn't built around a town, it wasn't had an infrastructure, it was built simply on pure farmland. And of course, the motto is build it and they will come. That's exactly what happened, and now the town is one of the most storied in the world. And for those that prefer their action on foot, of a smaller nature, there is, funnily enough, a golf course situated inside the motor speedway itself. But I don't really care for much about golf because it's not as fast or as high octane as what the action will be tonight. Here, ready for round 2 of the championship here in Indianapolis with ACC Race Nation. I'm Jack Millington, your commentator, as always, on the GT3 Challenge Series. We've been following Davey Zoutenbayer in a number 18 Nissan as he's coming through the first few corners. And this is one of those circuits that can cause a bit of drama in the racetrack. You'll be surprised, well, actually, you won't be surprised to know that the first corner, long straight, heavy braking zone, could cause all sorts of antics going into turn 1. It's going to be a curiosity to see how the drivers will adapt to this layout that has been, of course, present at Indianapolis since 2014. There have been a few infield circuit layouts before, but this is the one that the track has had for a period of time before being refreshed again relatively recently. Let's have a look at the drivers who are out racing tonight. I've obviously been following Davey Zoutenbayer. His brother is also racing this evening. We've got Roland Jordan. We've got, of course, Peterson there, who had a great race last week, did Mitchell. He finished 9th on debut in the 84 Ferrari. Jordan Hardin's back in the big Bentley. It's Steve Hall. It'll be Davey Zoutenbayer, Howard Dunn, John Wells. It will also then be Jacob Byford-Rue, Zolt Barabas, Daniel Takacs, Ballant Balak. You've also got Mr. Ursinus, that's Gerwald himself, Jeffrey Van Buren, Dennis Penders, Danny Felix, Danny Zoutenbayer, Joe Warner, Stuart Packham, and Nick Lamming in an updated Mustang livery there in the almost like the Buzzing Hornets Jordan from the late 90s of Formula 1. But two drivers have got a lap time on the board. One of them is Davey Zoutenbayer. Howard Dunn puts his Aston Martin V8 into second position. Jordan Hardin there is in third position. Hi, Mikey. Hope you're doing all right. Why are you not out on circuit, Mikey? You're watching from home. I would have expected you to be there. Hope you're doing all right if you're not feeling too good. Evening to you, Jordan, as well, who's watching. Hope you're doing fine, buddy. Good lap time to start things off. Steve Hall up to second place of the lap setters. Byford-Rue's in fifth position, and there's Davey Zoutenbayer being displaced by Jeffrey Van Buren in the 296 GT3 Ferrari. Obviously, that updated Max Verstappen livery, maybe the Verstappen livery giving him an extra couple of tenths there in his mind. and Daniel Takacs is into the second row of the grid in third place, because Stuart Packham has gone to the top of the timings provisionally on a 1:37.5. A very close knit group there from first to 8th position. Joe Warner being the outlier, but Joe is quicker than that. Daniel Takacs is flashing him, but they are both on a qualifying lap, so Joe doesn't need to move out of the way. Just to make that plainly clear, if a driver's on a qualifying lap, they don't need to move. But there's quite a few people who are joining into the stream, so it's good to have everybody with us tonight. Let's find one of the drivers to ride on board with. Davey's just come into turn 1, which is a bit of bad timing. That is Danny Felix facing the wrong way. I would describe that as being less than ideal. But this is going to be an interesting one for this evening. I'm really excited to see how the drivers will adapt to the action around this circuit. And as I said before, there will be opportunities for overtakes, aplenty, of course. I'm just trying to make sure we get everything in the right position. There's a couple of interesting fluctuations going on my system that I'm running here. I'm not quite sure what is happening there. We will work it out as we go along. But Zol Barabas up to second. The Nissans are performing strongly. They kind of showed a little bit of their pace last week, but Zol Barabas looked very quick in practice. He was the fastest driver out there, of course, fresh off his best ever result in ACC Race Nation last week with that second place finish. He is in second place currently. He does have Stuart Packham looming in the shadows. Davies Attenborough in fourth. There's Steve Hall in the top 5. Gerwin Ursness was in 6th place, but we've just had a change as Jordan Harding puts the big Bentley into the top 4. What about Mitchell Peterson? Where's he out on circuit? He's just coming out of that corner just there. John Wells yet to set a lap time, but he's just come out of the pit. So we'll see if the number 69 Audi can make an impact in qualifying. Steve Hall goes across the line, no improvement from him. Dennis Penders, he got caught up in a few incidents last week, did Dennis, so we didn't really see the full potential of him in that Mustang. Curious to know how he's going to do for the action this evening. There we have got Penders just coming through into 9th place with that qualifying effort. Joe Warner has closed the gap down actually to the rest of the field, so that's quite encouraging for Joe. But that AMR looked like it was bouncing its way through those couple of corners. I do apologise for some of the silence that is going on in this headset. Something that I am working on in the background, something that really seems to be affecting, almost like a bit of distortion going on realistically. I'm going to try and fix that for a moment. Just bear with me. Thank you for your patience. well, it does look as if we've thankfully been able to resolve those technical issues that I was struggling with. Let's get out there, let's get on board with some of the actions. Alt Barabas currently provisional pole with less than 9 minutes remaining, and he's actually in a relatively decent spot, so we'll go on board with the Hungarian, who is effectively the front runner for the championship right now, as Ali Pocket is not racing by the seams of it tonight, although Zolt does take an awkward line, I would describe it, the Hungarian through the last couple of corners there. It's an awkward braking zone actually for turn 13, but we'll see how Barabas does. So he comes onto the start finish, straight onto the banking, and blasts his way down towards turn number 1. Difficult right-hander for the first braking zone. It is very heavy, so getting that braking point is crucial for a good start to the lap. Brakes just after the 250 marker into second gear. The car floats a little bit to the outside of the track there going into turn 2, but he is improving on his lap time. Into turn 3, completely flat in the cars, but then it's all about getting the braking down into second gear, and look, you can see the back end of the Nissan just wanting to step out on him. Turn 5 completely flat, but turn 6 is going to be where the first of the long progressive corners will carry him around this circuit. Got to be patient on the throttle, and Barabas doing his absolute best for that. The second of the long corners onto turn number 7. No real need to worry about track limits too much at that corner, but another heavy stopping zone at turn 8. He's got to go beyond the cones on the inside line and then just clip the inside of the curb there. He's got a touch deep, that'll compromise him through 9 and then into 10 where the car in front of us, that's Joe Warner, kicks up the dirt. Into turn 11 and then onto what is kind of the back straight briefly. We go round the banking and onto that on turn 12, but then we've got to spot the braking zone again heavily for this awkward chicane into 13. Down through the gears, he snatches a front left brake, I think, and runs marginally off the road. Into 14 for the penultimate corner, and he's a touch wide again, compromised from that entry into 13 previously. Back onto the banking at turn 15, and Barabas will not improve on that lap, but there is, if he can just get one lap together, I do feel like Barabas can find potentially half a second on his lap so far. His best time so far is at 36.6, and he could be knocking on the door of the 135s if he can find the lap time, and that's crucial for the race ahead. Jordan Harding still on the second row of the grid. He's not improving on this lap so far. He will remain in 4th place. John Wells yet to set a valid lap time. We're following him at turn 13 now. Mikey, if you are still watching, do comment what's going on in terms of the, well, I was going to say the sadness of you not racing this evening. But John Wells is going to come towards the start-finish line, and that gets a lap time on the board. Not representative, but will stop him from starting at the back of the grid. Byford Rue's in front of him as well, but those two seemingly a little bit further away from the pace than what we would expect. So I still think there's more representative times to come in. Packham's just gone into 3rd place. Mitchell Peterson's down in 8th currently. And Nick Lamming is going to be going on to the start-finish straight. Is this going to be a valid lap time for Nick in the Mustang? It is, but again, it's not a representative effort at 2 minute 20. We know that Nick can drive a lot quicker than that. He drove really well, actually, did Nick last week. He got his best ever result in ACC Race Nation with that 8th place, but he got taken out, involved in an incident earlier on in the race which kind of compromised him. Ooh, and that line will compromise the rest of his lap. So he's got enough time to go back to the pits if he needs to and get back out there. But yeah, it was unfortunate for Nick. He was fighting for a podium, but it seemingly all just fell away from him. Is this Steve Hall coming towards the start-finish line? It is. Over the last layer of bricks that are at the brickyard. But Steve remains in 5th position. Jordan Harding back in the pits, but the top 3 covered by less than 0.2 of a second. Stuart Packham comes through the awkward turn 13, 14 chicane in quotation marks is how I'm going to go in to describe that. But one of the first times that we raced at this circuit in terms of ACC Race Nation, the first time that I remember us racing here, I do recall a couple of drivers being pretty strong around this track, and I know that Stewart was one of those at the time. He had a pretty rotten race back in season 10. It was a race actually won by Anthony Hunt, the only time he ever won a race with the championship. But Stewart looked mightily fast that day. I think I recall he got a drive-through penalty, if memory serves me correctly, the first time that I remember commentating on this racetrack for the championship, way back in season 10 now. We're obviously on season 13. So there's been a lot of racing action since then. But pack him in third, and do not rule him out of contention tonight. He is one to watch through the course of the championship. Jordan Harding coming back out of the pit, so Jordan feeling like there's a little bit more time in there. I think he'd be encouraged though with a second row starting berth, as will Danny Zoutenbayer, looking to get his best qualifying position in a non-Ferrari ever. Of course, Danny had that ill-fated first third of the season in the Mercedes last time around in season 12. This is looking more promising from the inverted Bumblebee. Roland Jordan's putting a good effort actually to be in 6th place as it stands. But Danny comes around the final corner. Let's see what lap time the Dutchman can do. No improvement from him. Howard Dunn in the background. 12. Moves up to 11th, so a little improvement from him. What about Balak? No improvement just yet. Mitchell Peterson. That's a very close group actually. The top 12 separated by less than a second. And I just cut over to Davey Zoutenbayer and Nick Lamming. No improvements from either of those two. We are going to be keeping an eye on now as the drivers go flying past the start-finish straight. So it is Van Buren next up to set a valid lap time. Let's see what the Ferrari man can do. Not quite quick enough to improve on a lap time. Harding goes on to his new lap. Ursinus is in 12th place. He's the last of those drivers within a second of pole. And Zolt Barabas has decided he's not going to go back out there. So that is the end of qualifying for the Hungarian. I'm just watching as I think that was Dennis Penders going into 9th place. Steve Hall remains in 7th for the time being. Go down towards Danny Felix. Whoa! There's a huge snap of oversteering, smashes into the barrier, and that is his qualifying over. John Wells has got to be careful. I think the BMW is just out of the way anyway. But John Wells goes... I was saying John Walls because Danny Felix hit a wall. But John, big improvement that. Just puts himself right on the fringes of the driver in front of him, of Balak. Danny Zoutenbayer has called it a day. He's not going to improve any further. So Howard Dunn, the next driver to come across the start-finish line. He goes to 11th. Balak is going to get one more lap in here. Mitchell Peterson will continue on. And the Ferrari remains in 10th place. Still a strong effort. Davey Zoutenbayer comes across the line. He's got one more lap. Nick Lamming, that's better. That's more like it from Nick, into 16th place. About 2 seconds off pole position. But Jeffrey Van Buren, this is going to be tight with the checkered flag for Jeffrey. It's going to be mightily close, but he will get one more lap in. Van Buren doesn't improve. Jordan Harding, I think he's going to see the checkered flag. He does. And he stays in 4th place. That was unlucky, that, for Jordan. I feel like another lap. He might have got the tyres in the right window for what he would have wanted. But alas, Jordan will go as high as 4th in this quali session. Dennis to the line. He remains in 9th. Steve Hall trying to get himself inside the top 5 if he can. Can't quite bridge the gap, but still, he's only 2/10 at most away from Jordan Harding in 4th, so that'll be encouraging. Daniel Takacs has got Stuart Packham behind him. Well, that's very wide from Takacs there. Will he have any form of improvement? He doesn't. Stuart Packham across the line, and he remains in 3rd place. So we look to Howard Dunn trying to break inside the top 10. The South African trying to pick up where he left off from last season. And he remains in 11th position, but still a competitive effort from him. There's Mitchell Peterson towards the start-finish line. Oh, good effort from Peterson to go up to 4th. Davies Autenbayer responds in kind and goes to 6th. And Nick Lamming improves as well. So last lap improvements for a trio of drivers there. But the big one we're looking at is Jeffrey Van Buren. Can he challenge for his first pole position in quite a long time? Can he get there towards the start-finish line? He does! And Jeffrey Van Buren has snatched pole position at the last from Zolt Barabas, who's denied his first pole with ACC Race Nation. A fabulous last lap effort from the Dutchman. He's got himself in the prime seat for this race. He'll be delighted with that. Zolt Barabas, he'll be pleased with that, but there's more time to come from him. Watch out for the Hungarian during the course of the race, whether he can put a good, consistent race run together. So he'll start on the front row. So it is a European front row, I must add, as well, with the Dutchman followed by the Hungarian. Then it's Stuart Packham in 3rd place, who is distinctly English, I must add. Mitchell Peterson, best qualifying of the season for him in his 2nd event with the championship. He's on row 2. Jordan Harding is very happy with his 5th place. He's quite pleased with that, according to the comments. And then it's Danny Zoutenbayer inside the top 6. Best qualifying he's done outside of being in a Ferrari. Roland Jordan got a good lap in to start in 7th place, with Steve Hall in 8th. On row 5, it's Davy Zoutenbayer and Dennis Penders. And then Howard Dunn is the last of the drivers within a second. But this is a very competitive field tonight, because if you look a little bit further down at the rest of the drivers who didn't quite make it into the top 10, Gerald Ursinus is the first driver outside of that, but 1.1 seconds, that's a good lap time from the number 33. It's a fellow BMW driver of Daniel Takacs in 13th at the front of row 7. Alongside him is Nick Lamming on the exact same time. Ballant Balak is 15th, with John Wells in 16th place. So 16 drivers within 1.8 seconds of pole position. That is a competitive grid. Jacob Byford-Rue will be encouraged by that lap time in 17th. Joe Warner will start 18th, and Danny Felix at the back of the grid in 19th position. We are about to get underway here at Indianapolis, but we're going to give myself a little breather for a minute, and then we'll be back for the formation lap here at the Brickyard.
Seconds. 20 seconds. 10 seconds. Green light, green light. Go, go, go.
As I was saying, but it looks like everyone's got through not just the first sector, but the second sector looking pretty good as well. But Zolt Barabas starting to try and stretch his legs already. He's just under 3/4 of a second clear of Stuart Packham as they come into turn 13 for the first time. That's unbelievable speed carried from Packham through the turn 13. The brakes on the Lamborghini clearly working strongly. And Jordan Harding will be looking at this Ferrari and thinking he's got an opportunity early doors, but there's a lot of wake coming off the rear spoiler of that Ferrari, and you just saw the Bentley understeer out of the final turn there. He is closing up the gap. I know that Harding won't do anything stupid, and sure enough he doesn't do. Just looking a little bit further back, John Wells there in 15th place. Ursinus has had a bit of a moment somewhere. He's got a bit of damage to the front of that car, and Byford Rue went backwards as well, so a couple of movements throughout the field. I have to find out what happened to Ursinus with that damage. He had qualified a little bit higher up in 11th. He's down to 17th now. But the front two trying to make a break for it here. They've got a second and a bit over Van Buren. As Packham pushes to the extremities. Look at the dust being kicked up on the exit of the right-hander there at turn number 7. Into turn 8 at the heavy braking zone. Nick Lamming has stabilised his position. There's Dennis Penders as the Zoutenbayers start trying to overtake one another. Oh, that's very wide from Danny. Riding on board of Daniel Takacs. And Steve Hall's looking to the inside line. Zoutenbayers giving him space. I think Steve might be able to get this done in the braking zone. You can only really get one car through, but Hall brakes late. He will have the inside line for the penultimate corner. I don't think Zoutenbayer... Well, he's been given enough room. Oh, contact! And then just about... I think everyone's managed to avoid it. Those two of Danny Zoutenbayer and Steve Hall having their own accident, sadly. Oh, and Ballock's been caught up in it as well. Just at the tail end of that, and then Gerwald Ursinus and Nick Lamming's in the wall. And just as I said, everything had looked okay. It all goes wrong in the blink of an eye. Danny Felix, the main beneficiary, has just gone past everybody. I'm not quite sure what occurred there. That looked very peculiar, but Felix is up to 11th place. He won't be complaining at the issues that has befallen everybody else, but it looked as if that Hall and Zoutenbayer were having their own accident, and I would say that's a racing incident in truth, but then everything else beyond that we didn't see. It was off camera because those two had gone so far wide as Daniel Takacs goes past and in front of Dennis Penders. We'll get a replay of that in a moment, just as we watch it on board from Howard Dunn's perspective with the Aston Martin. And Takacs retains 8th position as they go into the chicane now through turns 9, 10 and then 11 at the right-hander. Looks like we've got a car, and Steve Hall's gone backwards as well. And John Wells has had an issue, so there's been a few incidents that have occurred since we were on board with Steve Hall, as Howard Dunn... I think he was trying to scare Dennis Penders there into a mistake, but Penders was wise to it. Oh, as Byford Rue hits the wall. He's going to try and go for a lunge up the inside of Joe Warner. We're on board with the number 7. All sorts of odd movements going on. Just want to have a look at Jacob's car. Of course, Jacob is on the controller, so I think that's more of an input situation rather than anything else. He's right with Joe Warner at the moment, and Joe runs a little bit deep at turn 1. Joe retains 14th position. We have got a car in the pits, and that's Ursinus, unfortunately. That's a poor line, that, for Warner. Well, Byford Rue kind of scares him. I was going to say that's the input, but I think Byford Rue's got a little bit of lag here. Kind of needs to get past Joe, realistically, and see if he can clear it up. Oh, big slide out of the right-hander at 7. We've seen a lot of action there already. Trying to go around the outside. We've got John Wells looking to get involved in this battle as well. On board with Warner. Zolt Barabas continue to lead the race from Stuart Packham and Jeffrey Van Buren. A bit of a train starting to form for 4th place. Nice and early on the brakes from Warner. You can see Steve Hall now getting involved too. Is Jordan Harding looking to make a move? Oh, Warner's had a moment, and then Byford Rue has a bigger one, and I think that's going to be an overtake from John Wells. It is, and Steve Hall will have the momentum, and Jordan Harding is up into 4th place. Big move, gets himself past Mitchell Peterson there. We didn't see it, but I can see it on the track map that he's got in front of him. And Byford Rue drops down to 17th after that wild moment. So Joe Warner will be pleased. Now Jordan will be relatively pleased at that, because he knows now that he's got clean air as he runs almost too wide out of turn 7. And that gap is not too big in the sense of him trying to close that down. We know that Harding and his race pace is quite strong. It'll be a nice effort to see Peterson keep up with Harding. He'll learn a lot from following the Bentley, but his attention might also turn to Davy Zoutenbayer, who's moved up to 6th place. He's got past Roland Jordan, so Davy now making progress in the 2nd Nissan in the field. And there is Roland Jordan in the 973. But as it stands, Zolt Barabas continues to lead by about a second, and Jeffrey Van Buren has closed up to the back of these two now since we last followed them. But I'm going to go to the replay just for a moment. We need to find out what happened between Danny Zoutenbayer and Steve Hall, because that was an odd incident. So there is the number 5. And why they got caught up in something else. We'll go on board with Zoutenbayer actually, because he was right behind when this happened. But it's already happened at this point. So let's have a look. So they obviously went side by side into the penultimate corner. Steve Hall gives Zoutenbayer room, and then I think kind of swings across on Zoutenbayer. They gather it all together. They go onto the other side of the track. Zoutenbayer comes back on. Oh, and Ballack was already round. So Ballack was already facing the wrong way there. And it looked like he'd been nudged on his way. So let's just have a little look. So everyone gets caught up. Howard Dunn, we didn't see Howard Dunn actually going off the track. So that is another car we need to have a look at here. So does he just get scared off the road to avoid all the action? Yeah, he does. He takes the right action, holds the car quite nicely, slams the wall. Oh, and Ballack just lost it all by himself. What a peculiar... that is a bizarre accident, I have to say. Or does he lose it by himself? There is Steve Hall there. We'll just see it now from Balak's point of view. Oh, he did get a touch. I'll take it back from Balak. He got a small touch from Steve Hall. That was really unlucky. And then he gets slammed into by Ursinus. Just to add further insult to injury. Let's have a look at what happened with Ursinus. So Felix goes through on the inside. Balak, he'll have seen the yellow flag. He'll have seen all the action. And yeah, just ploughs into the back of him. I would argue that, is he unsighted at this point? It's easy to judge from that camera angle on the external shots. Let's have a look at it from his perspective. So into the final corner. Is he unsighted by the cars ahead? He's probably caught in two minds on which way to go in his defence, and sadly that's he's had to do a full lap actually of driving round with the wheel like that. So that is a shame. But that's what happened. So we got an overview of all the events that happened during the course of that accident on lap 2. And Ursinus has rejoined the track, but he's 2 laps down, unfortunately, after that incident. So he'll be just attempting to score points. I think we have lost a car from the race. It's not Danny Zoutenbayer or Davy Zoutenbayer. I'm just trying to calculate who it is. Zolt Barabas, though, he's shown a clean pair of heels. He's now 2.5 seconds in front of Van Buren since we've been watching. Harding is closing the gap down in 4th position. Then it's Peterson being closed in by Davy. See if that comes to fruition. Roland Jordan in 7th. Penders is 8th in front of Takacs and Dunn. That's your top 10. Zoutenbayer, after all of that, didn't really pick up much damage, but just got held up by the entire incident. He's in 11th with Felix in 12th. Nick Lamming is up to 13th. He also got caught up in the accident as well. So Nick Lamming, 2 races in a row where he's just been involved in misfortune is how I would describe it. John Wells is 14th. Steve Hall now in 15th. So this is a battle of the admins. And John will do his utmost to try and keep Steve behind. I'd like to believe he would anyway. Hall runs a little bit wide there actually out of turn 4. John goes quite defensive into that corner. I have to say though, Packham is losing time here. Ooh, that's a little bit deep into that corner. That's gone on board with Van Buren. In the 187 Ferrari, Jeffrey Van Buren is starting to put a little bit of pressure on Packham, and the gap at the front has just gone out to 3 seconds. And Barabas was 3/10 faster on that lap. Jordan Harding was faster than everybody in front of him on that lap, so watch out for the Bentley. Nice line from the man in 3rd place, but a better one from the man in 2nd. Into turn number 4 they go for the 8th lap of this 1-hour race. We are currently just under 14 minutes of the race completed thus far. Into the right-hander of turn 7. Everyone enjoying using as much of the road as they possibly can there. And then Van Buren will guide the car down through the gears, but it looked like he had a little wobble under the brakes there from the Ferrari driver. Just seemed to not quite have the car in a straight line for that one. But these two looking relatively evenly matched at the minute on this lap. Seems that the status quo in the pressure that Van Buren was putting on a lap ago, the status quo has now returned. And I think for these two it's going to be focusing on trying to close the gap to Barabas and maybe attempting to do an undercut on him during the course of this race. But Barabas, he's not been in this position before, where he's been leading from the front so early on. Had a good fight last week for the race victory for a couple of laps, but this is a new territory for the Hungarian, trying to join the esteemed great that is Norbert Mikulix and winning in international events. And it is an international event because we've got Howard Dunn, who's from South Africa, for anybody who tries to complain about that. A little bit of a slide from the Ferrari there as they went through the left-hander at turn 6. Oh, and a wobble from Packham. And I think Barabas had a big moment coming off the corner, because the gap now between Packham and Barabas has just come down to 2.6 seconds, maybe even 2.4 actually. We'll get an updated time as they come across the start-finish line in about 40 seconds from now. Mitchell Peterson continues to run in 5th place. Davy Zoutenbayer was closing the gap to the Ferrari, but that seems to have ballooned out again. Keeping on the theme of balloons, of course. For Indianapolis' first ever race was to do with balloons. Into the left-hander. Let's have a look at the lap times as they come towards the start-finish line. We'll try and see what the top 6 are all doing whilst we're here. So Barabas will come across the line to 1:37.3. Packham was actually a little bit slower, as was Van Buren. Harding is a touch quicker than the 2 in front. Peterson's in the 38s and Davy Zoutenbayer's in the 38s. So the top 4 very fast at the moment in the 37s. Davy Zoutenbayer still being shadowed by Roland Jordan, who is seems to have equipped himself quite nicely actually, has Roland. I think he's doing a good job in the BMW. Since he joined the championship. And certainly on for his best ever finish in the series, with 7th as it stands. John Wells has been overtaken by Steve Hall since we last followed him. Nick Lamming there in 12th place. Dennis Penders has Howard Dunn not too far away. Oh, and Dan Takacs has been overtaken by Danny Zoutenbayer there. So Zoutenbayer into the top 10. He's trying to bring on his recovery drive. Just a touch wide from the BMW there, the 301. Not the ideal line through turn 12 that you would have wanted. But again for Takacs, he's just doing a relatively solid job at the moment. Had some relatively solid speed last week, did Takacs. Finished in 17th, so he's seemingly equipping himself quite nicely for this championship. Always learning, always trying to develop your racecraft. Jordan just hanging on to Zoutenbayer here. On board in the helmet camera. That gap just dancing between 1 and 1.5 seconds. There's Ursinus, who's carried on. He's back out there. You've got to give the man credit, despite that accident damage. He has continued on. And number 33 now will be just looking to bag some points. Felix coming under a little bit of pressure from John Wells. Felix has already got further in this race than he did last week at Mazzano after getting a harsh disqualification from the track map, which said he was cheating. He wasn't. He just had a spin and then tried to rejoin the track, but there's a certain part of that race circuit at Misano which does disqualify the car. Van Buren's still there with Packham. This is the closest fight on track. Let's go on board with Packham this time. I was saying it was the closest fight because I just saw that John Wells had overtaken Danny Felix. So Wells up to 14th. How much further can he go? Now what Packham will be aware of here is not wanting to lose too much time. Now the question becomes, if Van Buren is faster than him, does he let the Dutchman go, or does he continue to just stifle the Dutchman's attacks? And does Van Buren think tactically about this and pit early? That is another question that will be answered as Byford Rue makes a regulation pit stop. Danny Felix has had a spin at turn 7. He's got the car pointing in the right direction. I still think there's a possibility for Gerwald Ursinus to not finish last here, even though he is 2 laps down. He has unlapped himself compared to Joe Warner. But still, you can see where the two are concertinaing up. Just going back and forward with one another through the corners. And Barabas as well is in a similar position where Packham will close the gap in the early parts of the lap and even in the middle part, and then onto the straight the Nissan can stretch its legs a little bit. And Jordan Harding is becoming more of a factor in this podium position. He is only 2.5 seconds behind now, so the Bentley is slowly but surely closing down that gap. A comment there from, oh, good to see you, Liam, hope you're doing alright. Missing you out there tonight. Saying, is it just me or is the number 33 not running full throttle? Let's have a look at Ursinus. Mapping is looking fine at the moment. Let's just watch him as he comes out of the next corner. That turn 7, that's already had a couple of spinners. Fires the car out. Looks okay to me. Although I have to say, actually, it looks like the car. Do you know what, Jay? I'll tell you what. If I was just going to follow Byford Rue, but that's not the case. There is a marginal difference. Well, we can't see it now because Danny Felix is in the pits, which is a little bit frustrating. But let's just watch Roland Jordan as he goes full throttle there, and then Ursinus moves into the next part of the track. I think that there might perhaps be a very slight variation in full throttle. Maybe Ursinus is getting 99.5. Every time we try and cut to them, they're both mid-corner or at the same point. Hi, Mikey. Why are you missing this race, Mikey? What's going on? And Jordan going up through the gears. Ursinus goes into the braking zone. I'm not. This isn't going to happen, is it? It's just the way that the cookie crumbles, I should say. Can't see it. I'm good. I want to just attempt it one last time. Ursinus is going to have a little bit of time to put the power down. There we go. In fact, Felix is full throttle. I think there's a very small margin. It looks like Ursinus maybe is running 99.5% throttle. Looks like he's not quite hitting the full threshold. So if you did see them not hit, Liam saying he's seeing a few of them. You must have eagle eyes, Liam, to be able to spot that. Because normally on my screen, when I get the green bar that comes up, it does miss a touch out at the end. Well, there we are. Howard Dunn right with Dennis Penders. And we have a pit stop for Jeffrey Van Buren. Well, I said it before, didn't I? that Van Buren might take tactics into his own hands and make a pit stop. He has done that, so he's looking for the undercut. It's about 5 minutes before most drivers would make their traditional pit stop. Sad to hear, Mike. Hope everyone's okay. But Howard Dunn is the closest fight on circuit with Dennis Penders as it stands, and Van Buren will be looking to get out into some clear air, and it does look like he will comfortably do that. So his outlap will be critical for the fate of this race, because that will have put Barabas and Packham on watch. Harding will be observing everything from his position in fourth. Doesn't stand to lose anything from Van Buren pitting early, but he might limit his opportunities later in the race. But these are all speculations and theories. Nice line that from Dunn. He's running to the back of Penders though. Just gone a little bit too eager at the right-hander of 11 and nudged the back of the Mustang. Into 12 and 13. The left-hander of 14 as well. Oh, is the door prized open for Dunn to squeeze through? Not quite. The AMR can certainly put its power down, and Dunn goes to the outside line. Penders covers it very strongly actually into turn one, and Dunn deciding not to challenge that. I thought that Dunn would have potentially attempted to get a little bit of slipstream and try around the outside. They do have Danny's Altenmeyer not far away though, so maybe Dunn is thinking about that. Also want to say that the race leaders have continued on, so no one responding as of yet to Van Buren's early stop. And again, Penders defending the inside line at turn 6, but that will compromise him. Suppose though, as a result of the switch back through 6 and 7, you can get away with holding a tighter line, because it won't really compromise your exit into 7. Yeah, that's very true. Oh, can Dunn do something impressive? Not quite. And that's, in fact, as a result of the lunge, he's put himself completely out of sequence for right the way through to turn 11. But that Aston Martin looking strong here. And Watkinson making a good point there, that most people aren't running full throttle. I can only imagine that that's either a pedal calibration issue or a conscious choice. I can't imagine it being anything else. Well, the only other element it could be, I suppose, is a visual glitch, which we have seen before. But it's a good point. Well raised, Liam. Thanks for mentioning that. Oh, we've got a spinner, and that, I think, I was going to say, is that Daniel Takacs? It was, who dropped it at turn 13, and he's behind Steve Hall, Nick Lamming, and a bouncing Howard Dunn. Let's just go back to the garage, just get a bit of an update of where everybody is. So Zob Barabas still leads. He's 5 seconds in front of Stuart Packham, who's 3.2 clear of Jordan Harding. Davies Attenborough runs 4th. Roland Jordan is 5th. Dennis Penders is hanging on. Whoa! As Howard Dunn decides to turn his Aston Martin into a very expensive sandcastle. That was a huge slide through. I'm amazed he actually managed to keep that pointing in a straight line. But the gravel came and scooped him up. So Howard Dunn continues on, but a few seconds now behind Penders. Nick Lamming is running in 8th place, 5 seconds in front of John Wells. Mitchell Peterson pitted on that lap, as did Danny Zoutenbayer. So that's going to bring Jeffrey Van Buren comfortably past the pair of them. Will give us a bit of an idea, though, of how much time Van Buren has gained relative to Peterson. Peterson now picks up the throttle. Last I looked, there was about 7 or 8 seconds between himself and the Ferrari. We won't know until he gets back out on circuit realistically what that gap has become. And crosses the first safe time beam. Now, Jeffrey Van Buren's got to get past Warner here. This is an important overtake. They are fighting over position. I think Van Buren is in front, so The Ferrari moves into 10th place. Mitchell Peterson lost a couple of seconds, and Joe Warner, ooh, for a moment I thought might have run into the back of the Dutchman there, but manages to gather it all together. Byford Rue running in 16th place. Danny Zoutenbayer after his pit stop is 13th now. And Roland Jordan and Nick Lamming now enter the pits. Those two on the effectively the same lap, but Jordan has served his pit stop, so he's coming down the straight now. Where will Roland Jordan feed out in relation to Zoutenbayer? That's someone who will be in Zoutenbayer's radar. Would have typically been, but just looking at where Jordan is down the pits, he looks like he's going to come out miles in front of the Dutchman. There you go. Now, as we were talking, race leader is in the pits. So Packham and Harding have carried on. Where is Van Buren at the minute? He's on the straight between turn 7 and 8. He's still got quite a way to go around the lap. Of course, Indianapolis's pit lane is such a long pit lane. It'll take quite a long time to clear it. So John Wells will move up into 6th place. Might we see a John Wells cameo at the front of the race? That would be quite a fun one for the fans. Barabas now coming down the pit lane. Van Buren is going into turn 13. Barabas still got a long way to go. So to give you context, Joe Warner's still got a long way to go. But Van Buren, he was about 3 to 3.5 seconds behind the Hungarian, and Barabas is going to get up to speed. Off he goes. That looks like a really good pit stop from Zolt. In fact, he has come out miles clear of Van Buren. That was an incredible stop for the Nissan team. And they will be high-fiving after that one, because that is going to give a huge advantage to the man who was running in the lead and only had a few seconds gap to this man. That is no longer the case, as Zolt Barabas has a comfortable advantage over the Ferrari. Dives down the inside past Joe Warner, who's Joe Warner must be thinking of deja vu. He's just had a lap where he's been overtaken by Van Buren for position, and now Van Buren has lapped him. As Penders and Dunn come in at the same time. So that leaves just 4 drivers yet to make a pit stop. John Wells isn't the other one at the back. He's got Nick Lamming a lap down behind him. Traffic is going to be a factor as well in this, for when people pit. And yet Jordan Harding has actually closed the gap down here, because I think Stuart Packham is catching the traffic at the worst time. Because look at Roland Jordan, he's separating the 2 race leaders at the moment, and Packham caught him at that turn 8 left-hander, which certainly will have compromised him, and Harding has got the gap down to 2 seconds. Now where does Harding get past Jordan? That's not a sentence that makes any sense typically. I think Harding actually went a little bit wide, but yeah, of course, Roland Jordan, Jordan's surname, and Jordan's surname is Jordan's first name. That is a grammatically correct sentence, and that is Stuart Packham in the pits. And Roland Jordan's going to have to move out of the way here. He's very close to impeding the Bentley. I wonder if he's just going to move out of the way at this point of the track. No, he carries on. Well, yeah, Harding's run wide. I think Harding's going to get frustrated here, because he's being held up. And we've talked about back markers before, but this is we're on board with the number 16, trying to put a lap on Roland Jordan, but the M4 does not want to move, and look at the amount of time that the Bentley is losing. On this lap alone, he's 3/4 of a second down, and he's running in dirty air. And I think there might be a steward's inquiry coming at this point. And that's and the Bentley's all over the road. And Harding will be immensely frustrated at this. He'll be furious because he's just in the dirty air with the car in front that hasn't moved out of the way. And as a result, he's dropped a 1.5 seconds back. That's a huge amount of time lost. John Wells has gone into the pits, as has Davies Attenborough. So Harding, who we're on board with there, he's the only one now on track not to have made a pit stop. And continues on with his own strategy. I think this is costing him. Now, where did Packham come out in relation to Barabbas? He's some way behind. So Zolt Barabbas pitting when he did seemed to be the perfect time because Van Buren didn't undercut him. And actually, there we go, now the time tower is actually more accurate. Van Buren has come out not so far away from Packham, but Barabbas is 8 seconds in front. And this is looking good. With 23 minutes remaining, I won't say too much. Barabbas has got the lead and is in a solid position right now. Van Buren is now back within a second of Packham, so these two will resume their podium fight. Dennis Penders has been overtaken by Danny Zoutenbayer, whose recovery drive is going really strongly. This might be one of the drives of the day for me. And I know that Danny Zoutenbayer, former champion, of course, within ACC Race Nation, but always in the Ferrari, but this seems like he's almost coming back to his best a little bit. Seems to have the pace, seems to be driving nicely in that car. And he did have a difficult moment where he got caught up in an incident with Steve Hall. Neither of their faults. And Jordan Harding pits, just as I was saying that, but yeah, well done to Danny Zoutenbayer up in 8th place. Harding is in the pits. We've got a stop and go penalty for Byford Rue, who will be ruining that mistake. Oh, he just got off the pit limiter a little too early, sadly for Jacob. So Zolt Barabbas is going to take the lead back in this race. Barabbas is looking pretty confident in a minute. Harding has got himself underway from the pits, but Packham and Van Buren are still engaged in this fight. And I wonder if Harding will have tried something a little bit different. He's coming down the pit lane now, as the camera now bowls over and Barabbas takes the lead of the race back. And there's Packham. And there's Van Buren, who's very close to the Lamborghini. Harding is going to come out just behind these two. But the race for the podium is on. So there we are. 20 minutes to go. This is the state of play. Zolt Barabbas leads 8 seconds clear of Stuart Packham, who's half a second in front of Van Buren. This fight continuing to rage on. Jordan Harding is in contention for another podium, but sits in 4th place. He'll be watching with Ernest. Mitchell Peterson's effectively been on his own since getting overtaken by Jordan Harding, but He's putting in a really good shift, as is Roland Jordan for that matter. And Danny Zoutenbayer isn't far away from this fight with his brother again from the early stages of the race. Davey leads Danny by 3.9 seconds. Then it's Dennis Penders in 9th. Howard Dunn in 10th place, who's back behind the Belgian again. Daniel Takacs, after having his spin, is running inside 11th place. Steve Hall trying to recover from his incident as well in 12th position. Then it's Nick Lamming, Joe Warner, John Wells. And I did say that Gerwald had an opportunity to get out of 18th place. He's up to 16th. So that's working out well. And what is a solid drive back through the field. He might not get much higher than that, but still he's going to have beaten potentially Danny Felix, who's got huge damage on the front of that car. And Byford Rood now back out on track. This is where the action is, though. And Packham doesn't look as comfortable as he did in the first stint. And Buren looking to try and get himself into second place, if he can possibly do so. There's Mitchell Peterson, the second highest Ferrari in the field. It was an encouraging drive from the number 84. But this will be encouraging Van Buren. He's looking strong. And since the pit stops, he's been putting more sustained pressure on Stuart Packham, who readily admitted he'd slipped into his drinking trousers. I think he might have cut the corner there, actually, at the penultimate one. And looks like he had an odd gear shift coming out of the final corner. Down towards turn 1 they go once more. But the thing for Van Buren is that the Lamborghini and the Ferrari are evenly matched down the straights. What they don't want to do is involve Jordan Harding in it, because if he picks up the slipstream, Jordan will have an opportunity to go through. And he is catching them. Not by a lot, but just by enough to be a presence in this fight. This is a good return to form for Van Buren. This is much like the driver we've seen finish in the top 3 in the driver's standings before. On for a first podium. Quite a while for that matter, actually. I know he got a podium last season. It was just the one, and that was at that Silverstone race that I've mentioned a few times. But he'll be encouraged. The pole position for today, but I don't think anyone has had the pace to live with Zolt Barabas today. He has been imperious out front. Let's have a look at the lap times. Barabas with a 37.5. Let's have a look at these times from the gents on track. So Packham 37.2, 37.5 from Van Buren, and a 37 flat from Harding. Can Jordan Harding make it 2 podiums from 2? Can Stuart Packham get his campaign off to a podium setting start? Didn't finish, of course, last week. That Mazzano be one of his drop scores for the season ahead. But look at the camera behind, and there's a large Bentley looming in the mirrors for Van Buren. Let's get on board with him. You can just see in that middle screen in the right hand side of your picture, within that picture, there is a Bentley fast approaching. That gap less than a second now. Pack him into the right hander. Nice line that through there. onto the banking into this difficult braking zone of turn number 13. Feels like that oh, that was an awkward line that from Harding. He just got that a little bit too hot into there. Let's drop them away a little bit. Quarter of the race remaining. Davies out and by is inching to the back of Roland Jordan. Let's just have a look at the lap times from this next quadrant of cars, because we'll include Mitchell Peterson in this as well, and Davies' brother, who's just behind. I think Danny's actually just made a mistake. It was 3.3 seconds, now 4.5. So Peterson does a 38.0. Roland Jordan does a 38.2, and Davies out and by does a 37.5. Danny does a 39, which would explain the mistake. And Howard Dunn has just got in front of Dennis Penders by the looks of it. He's been fighting that all race long. There's our race leader. 7 seconds in front of Packham. He's lost a little bit of time on the last lap compared to what he's normally been doing, but I wonder if he was just lapping traffic there. Look at this. Here we go. Jordan Harding is now back within a second, but he's got to get his braking zone right. He lost time here before. Down through the gears into that turn 13 once again. Good, thanks Liam for that comment that he's just given me there in the chat area. Looking forward to seeing the Spin of the Day award going to yourself or Joe. John in 14th place at the minute. Stuart Packham still leading this queue. Behind him, although he has been under quite a lot of pressure, he hasn't realistically had to defend any lines. He's been quite solid in that regard, and Van Buren is the one who's coming under significant pressure. Little wobble that from Harding. Now fully in the wake of the Ferrari in front of us. A little bit wide that from the Dutchman, and again at turn 7. Harding trying to get on the power early. See if he can close that gap. Towards turn 8. Another of the big stops on this circuit. It's all about neatness through these next few corners now for the drivers. Can't rush the cars too much. If they do, they'll happily bounce over the curb and fire you off the road. So far, so good. Of course, don't forget the Bentley is right-hand drive, so it's a little bit different from its perspective of the racetrack. Deep that from Van Buren, and Harding just needs to try and put him offline here. Get a good exit out of the penultimate corner, and the Bentley could be onto the back of the Ferrari here. Into the right-hander. Harding's in the slipstream, and Van Buren is going to be hard-pressed here. This is a chance for Harding to go for a podium. To the inside line goes the Dutchman in the Ferrari. And the Bentley draws alongside at the outside line. He's going to be nose in front on the brakes down into turn 1. Harding tries to stick it around the outside. He's going to keep his nose there at turn 2. Van Buren credit too, gives him the space. Turn 3, it's going to widen out for Harding. He's not going to find a way through there, but Van Buren goes too deep. He's going to almost run off the road, and Harding takes the position. Jordan Harding, I said it was coming. Gets himself onto the podium, and Van Buren will be just kicking himself at that. He'd done the hard work to keep that place from the Bentley, but alas, Harding finds a way through. And whilst that was going on, Packham managed to gain 3/4 of a second from that fight, just to give himself a lap or two of reprieve, because it does feel like that Harding's going for second here. Barabas is 10 minutes away from his first ever victory in the series. But that was a really good little fight between the two. And Van Buren's podium search continues. But that all came from that corner that we've just nipped through there at turn 13. Just put Van Buren offline, Harding sized it up. And that was it, carried on all the way down the straight. We'll just show you the emphasis of what I mean about the straight line capabilities of that Bentley. Off it goes. Oh, Van Buren, and he touched the wall there. There's nothing that Van Buren can do. And I've spoken about straight line differentials over the course of my time commentating on ACC Race Nation, and it's evident. If you've got someone who knows how to drive the Bentley, they can make good use of it and potentially win a championship. We saw Stuart Packham put in a great campaign last time we saw a Bentley full time on circuit, and now Harding's trying to do the same. Van Buren in 4th position. There's Davies out and by. Oh, Roland Jordan's made a mistake, and that is a move completed for the Dutchman. Up to 6th he goes. He's been slowly but surely reeling in the BMW. And Roland just made that mistake to allow the Dutchman up another spot. And he's shown good speed, his Zoutenbayer, today. And maybe if he hadn't have been stuck in the midfield, he might have joined the front 4, the quartet at the front. Best lap of 37.5, which is in the ballpark of the drivers at the front, but not quite in Barabas's orbit. The only driver, I believe, in the 36s. Harding very close on a 37 flat. But now this is the new target for the Bentley. Barabas does a 37.4 as he comes across the start-finish line. What about Packham? 37.4 and a 36.9 from Harding. Well, there's not one person in the 36s anymore. It's 2. And Van Buren was in the 38. So it does seem, sadly, that the Dutchman is just starting to fall away. Danny Felix still in the pits. Sadly, he hasn't come out since lap 22. So clearly issues for the M4 driver. Howard Dunn, as I said before, he was in that fight with Dennis Penders. That's changed now. After that overtake. Byford Rue in 17th place. There's Danny Zoutenbayer in 8th position. Steve Hall right behind Daniel Takak. So can the Season 8 champion find another spot to recover from his incident earlier? Well, he found a spot on the grass that nearly took him off the road. Barabas did a slow lap there. I wonder if the Hungarian made a mistake. He did a 1:38 and Packham was a second quicker there. A little error, maybe some butterflies settling in these last few minutes for the race leader. Does not want to make a mistake now. We follow Steve Hall. Snap of oversteer from the M4 in front of us. Hall realistically needs to try and surprise Takacs if he can. He's closing that gap down. Is there going to be a move on? At 13, he's going for it, and then he gets his braking zone all wrong and smashes through the polystyrene. He just outbraked himself there. He was trying to find a way through, and look at the gap between Harding and Van Buren. That's a great shame. It's been a really good event for Van Buren. His podium hunt will continue on to round 3 at Suzuka next week. But yeah, Barabas had a poor lap. He actually lost 2 seconds to Packham, so not quite sure what happened there. We ride on board with Harding though. This is the closest fight on circuit in these last few minutes, as Barabas puts a lap on Nick Lamming. That looked like a 37 from Barabas. We can't quite see the rest of the times. Packham with a 37.4 and Harding with a 37.222, Van Buren with a 37.8. This is going to be a slightly different challenge for Packham. He's gone wheel to wheel with Harding before, and over the seasons, more often than not, he does come out in front of Harding, but that momentum in recent times has been swinging the other way in Harding's favour, and even Packham has acknowledged the threat that Harding carries. But now he's going to have to face the might of the Bentley from the other side, driving that Lamborghini towards turn 8. Nice clean lines from both drivers. Into first gear, deep from Packham. It's going to compromise him through 9 and 10. Gets the car swinging really nicely, actually. Set himself well for 11, but Harding was a match for that. And he's in the slipstream, coming through 12. I don't think he's going to be close enough for a move at 13, but Packham has to defend that one. And that's going to put him offline. This is what Jordan did last time, but Packham was able to get across and take a natural line through that corner. As the rear threatens to break traction out of the final corner. Zsolt Barabas has got 2 laps potentially to go. Does seem like it'll be 2 laps, but it could be 3. Packham's getting the slipstream effect against him here. And Harding remains in 3rd position. Little wobble from the Bentley as we ride on board from the rear spoiler of Stuart Packham's Lamborghini Huracan. Into turn number 6 they go. Slightly different lines from the 2 drivers as the cars then flick right into turn 7. Bit of understeer from the Bentley there as it sits in the wake of the 2-time champion. Down towards turn 8, into the left-hander we go. Oh, it's just a little bit deep again from Packham. Not as bad this time. You can see he's having to work hard to get that car turned in. He's not as compromised as he was on the previous lap. Harding was right with him to the point where Packham needed to put a defensive shape out there. But they will be able to fight going on to the final lap. I'm just watching as Zsolt Barabas comes towards the start-finish line. That is going to be mightily close. I think this is his last lap. It isn't, according to the game. Maybe. I think it might be, to be honest with you. Considering how close he is to the start-finish, I think it might be the last lap of this race. We'll have to wait and see. But Packham is trying to hold on to 2nd place. He's doing his absolute utmost in the Lambo. Into the right-hander. And Barabas still leads the way, but Packham coming under increased scrutiny. He's going to be having to go defensive into turn 6. Back on board with Harding. See how close he got there through turn 7. He's got a nice exit out of 7. I think the braking zone is just going to come a little bit too early, but Packham feels the need to defend. Down through the gears they go. Packham's gone too deep. That might be the chance that Jordan Harding needs to go through. He's going to be on the outside at turn 9. They give each other racing room and Harding lets it go. But Packham will be offline for 11. All comes down to the exit for Harding here. Packham runs wide. This is the opportunity that Harding's been looking for the last few laps. He's going to have the inside line and he goes through. Jordan Harding, his patience paid off. He gets past Packham and into P2, what is looking to be potentially the final lap of the race. Will just cut forward to Zsolt Barabas as the timer ticks down. He could just brake, to be fair, but it's going to be a first ever win for Zsolt Barabas. as he comes across the start-finish line. He's taking the win. His first ever in ACC Race Nation. Harding gets second on the final lap from Packham in third. Van Buren with a good drive today in fourth position. The best of the rookies for this season. Mitchell Peterson takes that honour this evening. In fifth place, a great drive from the number 84. In a bit of no man's land, but I don't think he'll complain at that result. Davy Zoutenbayer was coming on strong towards the end there. He gets sixth place. What could happen for him this season? Roland Jordan and Danny Zoutenbayer with good drives, respectively, from the pair. There's Howard Dunn just in the background. He's going to finish in ninth place. Dennis Penders is going to finish 10th. Just as across the line. Steve Hull got up past Daniel Takacs in the end. We did have one retirement from this race in the form of Ballant Ballock, as Byford Rue gets out of the way. Nick Lamming has crossed the finish line in 12th place, as has John Wells and Gowan Ursinus. Steve Hull will finish in 11th place after the drama he encountered earlier on. Now I'm going to say this because Byford Rue crosses the line. There's a pair of Muppets in the Aston Martins there trying to smash up the car, and Byford Rue managed to spin it at the final corner, and nudges the wall. Great. I'm sure the head of AMR Racing will be delighted with that. But it is Zolt Barabas who takes his first ever win in ACC Race Nation. What a drive from him there. Jordan Harding takes second place, with Stuart Packham relegated to third place on the final lap, but put up a good drive, did Packham, as did Van Buren today. Might have gone his way had he have not had a rapid Barabas around him, to be fair. Mitchell Peterson with a creditable fifth, Davy Zoutenbayer with a good strong drive to sixth place, Roland Jordan with an underrated seventh there, good performance from the M4. Danny Zoutenbayer looking like he's starting to come back to form here in that Aston Martin. I know the race result doesn't reflect it, but his pace was quite strong tonight. In 8th place, Howard Dunn in 9th, Dennis Penders gets the last spot in the top 10. Steve Hull, recovering from his accident on lap 2 and 11th, of Daniel Takacs in 12th. Nick Lamming and John Wells were a lap down on 13 and 14. Joe Warner was 15th. Good recovery that for Gowan Ursinus in 16th place after the issue he had with that massive accident. Byford Rue in 17th. Danny Felix got stuck in the pits from lap 22 onwards, whether he'll be classified is another matter. And we did sadly lose Ballant Ballock, who had that huge impact that involved multiple cars. Well, that is all of the action then here from race 2 of 15 for the season ahead. It's far too early to be talking about championship challenges and everything, but Zolt Barabas will be delighted to know that he's got a first win on the board and 2 podiums in 2 races, similar to Jordan Harding, but Zolt has a race win to nudge him a little bit further ahead in the championship standings. But as I say, far too early to be thinking about all of that. Next week, of course, the drivers will be heading over to Suzuka for round 3, which I'll be delightfully commentating on. I'm really looking forward to Suzuka. It is always a track that throws up some interesting variants. Good comments coming in from Mikey. Thank you very much. Byford Rue saying the Aston Martin head has sacked him. That's not ideal. And then Jordan saying, what a race. Absolutely for you, Sarah, on the final lap. But for me and everybody here at ACC Race Nation, I've been Jack Millington. Thank you very much for watching. And wherever you might be in the big wide world, have a good one. And we'll see you next week in Suzuka.